All right, let's roll.
Excellent. Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Fairchild, and my co-host today is Mr. Yulin Lee. And together we lead us webinars on business and accounting and law, in the hopes that your business can survive at this crazy time. So, I'm starting this off, and I'll go for a bit, and then I'll hand it over to my co-host. So let's get this rolling. So, I'll hit my share screen and put up my presentation for today. And okay, can you see it okay, Yulin?
Yes.
Okay, page one.
Yep.
Alrighty, so that's our title page, Small Business COVID-19. We've been doing quite a few of these already. So, and page two. So a recap of what I talked about in week one, and talked about, your force majeure clauses, how you need to negotiate with your creditors, and open up, a dialogue, and there are corporate solutions to kind of keep your business afloat during this time. In week two, I talked about if you're an inventor, that what are good things you can be doing now during the quarantine. And I live in New York City, and we're kind of on the tail end of the quarantine, so hopefully maybe you have some business ideas. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right. So page four. So the title of this one is the Corporations 101 and 5 Mistakes to Avoid. I've seen quite a few of these mistakes, and as an attorney, just a lot of crazy business disputes. So, okay, mistake number one: picking the wrong business entity. So, we'll talk about some business entities and what they're good for, the pros and cons. So, let's start with an LLC. It's short for a limited liability company. It's great for solo entrepreneurs. It allows you to open your own bank account. They're generally they're member managed, and there's usually a lot less formalities for this, for the state. And so, um, like every state, if you want an LLC or any business corporation, you have to go through your state. That's these are business entities that are created by the state. You have to file documents with them, and that becomes crucial as well, because those formalities, what the state wants, will determine if you are able to continue with your business, continue with your business entity. So let's move to slide two. So LLC versus a corporation. You might see at the end of a business like comma Inc. or Incorporated or Corp, CORP. So those are the proper corporations as distinct from an LLC. And for those, you have like higher formalities requirements before that the state requires. You would need a board of directors. You have officers for the corporation and shareholders. So basically, these are bigger businesses than typically what an LLC would have. But one of the big advantages of having a corporation is you can sell off chunks of it, and the people who own a chunk is called a shareholder. And now about the New York Stock Exchange and all those things. If you buy a stock, now you are technically a shareholder. And the phrase "going public" means a company starts selling on the New York Stock Exchange or something like that. And so all of this that enables the company to raise a lot of money. So you can have, if you divest or sell portions of your company, you can raise. You call it raising capital, and you can raise a lot of money, and it's for a bigger business doing bigger things. But because of that, you also have more requirements by the state. And one of the biggest things to consider when you're deciding between corporations is the taxes. So an LLC has what's called a pass-through taxation. So basically, for tax purposes, it's like the LLC does not exist at all. And that's also similar for what's called an S corp. An S corp is a S corporation. So there's only one level of taxation. But the problem, or one thing you keep in mind, is for an S corp you can only have up to 100 shareholders. Obviously, that's not something that you want for like a New York Stock Exchange traded company, but it's something to keep in mind. In contrast, a C corp has what's known as like double taxation. So the business is taxed, the business pays taxes, and then the money passes on to the shareholders, and the shareholders themselves are taxed. So they call this a double taxation situation. Um, and it's something, if you have a very small business, you definitely do not want to have a C corp. Yeah, absolutely not. It's there are benefits obviously for that, but the big cost is double taxation. So that's mistake number one. You just gotta know what you want, and obviously talk to an attorney, someone who deals with these kind of things regularly, and generally the small businesses are safe with an LLC. So mistake number two is not obtaining any corporation, any business at all. So one of the main benefits of having a corporation is it protects you personally from personal liability. So there's a wall between your business and its debts and all that, and you personally. So a related question comes up is, do you need a corporation? Well, that's a little kind of a gray area. If you're generally, I want to say, like, if you're selling something, you probably do. I put yes in here, but then I was thinking that there are mom and pop, or um, your lemonade stands and these things. Like, they don't need corporations, but they are selling stuff. But but like, certainly if you're signing contracts, your business is signing contracts. The bigger the contracts, then you might really want to think about getting a corporation. So if you go on my webpage at fairchildlegal.com, there's a video about a client who I helped, and he had a situation where he did not get a corporation. He had a business, and the business failed, and he was personally sued for $100,000, and he was liable for all that. It was the business debts. And if you want to know what happened to that, well, you can go on my webpage and watch the video. But the main point is, you definitely, if you're going to do $100,000 worth of contracts, then you should definitely have a business, or business entity. Okay, so mistake number three is failing to maintain your corporation. So, like, as I mentioned before, that businesses are, entities are created by the local states, and every state has different requirements to maintain those corporations. So here in New York, for an LLC, we do like what's called the biannual filings, and they're pretty short and sweet. It's not really much of a pain. It was kind of a pain to create it, because you had to do, the postings in the papers for 5 weeks straight. But once you have an LLC in New York, it's not a big problem at all. Whereas like S corps and C corps, you'll have to do like periodic meetings. You'll have to do shareholder notices, all these things, and the meetings have to have a certain number, a quorum, with all these things. There's a lot of different requirements, and every state will have different ones for different business entities. And you have to do that. You have to meet those requirements. Otherwise, you might lose the business entity and then be exposed to personal liability. And I've seen that before as well. So I'm suing somebody who lost his business entity. I don't know if he knew that before I sued him, but he did. So we're going after him personally because he has no business entity. And so mistake number four. So it goes to who owns the corporation. If it's just one person, that's not an issue. But if you have more than one people, certainly shareholders, but mainly with partnerships and a small group of people, then you really need to have some sort of agreement. And definitely, if you have more than one owner, you need to have some sort of written agreement. And it's always best to do that before the trouble begins. Do it as soon as possible, when everyone gets along, everyone's excited about to start this business, and that's when those things need to be done. Because later on, when the partnership starts to fall apart, these things will not be resolved, and you're just looking for endless nightmares in court. So my final mistake here is similar to the ones before, just failing to protect your corporation. Obviously, there's filings for the state, but also you want to keep track of how happy are your partners, how happy are your shareholders. Is one of your partners withdrawing funds? Does one of them want out? And like these things can sink your business. It can sink your business. Or if somebody is committing fraud, using your business to commit a fraud, one of your partners you don't know about, that could be grounds to break the corporate shield and expose everybody to personal liability. So these are serious things, and obviously you want to talk to an attorney, um, and if there's a problem, but definitely want to talk to your partners, and that's always a good um, thing to do. So that's all I have to talk about today. I'll turn it over to you, Ewan, right now.
Sure.
There we go.
Thank you so much, Steve. And
Sure.
we do have a few questions
Oh, great.
from the audience. So one of the questions, this is also my personal question. I have many clients, either them having a small business or different
Right.
types of business. And they run into the problem is like, I am a small business, but I filed under C Corp, right? So I have to file the C Corp tax plus my personal and the double taxation. So then my advice to them is that you need to talk to an attorney. Possibly you can switch to one that's proper to your business needs. So how
Mhm.
easy, my question is, how easy it is to switch from one type of legal entity to another?
So it can be easy or it can be hard. It kind of depends. But if you have an LLC or corporation, changing the name of the corporation is actually pretty straightforward. There's some papers you file with the Department of State. I think it's, at least in New York, it's $100 or $200 or whatever to change your name, and assume the name is available. Then you have the name change. However, if you really want to go from an LLC to an S corp, or S corp to C corp, all these things, then you really have to file new papers as well, and that's kind of a pain. But um, and certainly if you were to buy a business, for sister companies, you might end up looking at multiple businesses, kind of like an umbrella of businesses own, or all these things. So it can get kind of complicated, and definitely the bigger the scale, then the more filings you'll need, and just to kind of keep everything organized.
Yeah.
And and just one other thing about that, if you actually have a business owning another business, and both businesses would have to meet all the requirements of like shareholder meetings and stuff like that. So just because you have a holding company, you still have to do all the proper maintenance for it. It needs its own annual meeting of shareholders, and all those things.
So the final answer is that there is a solution for your specific question, but you need to
Yeah.
really work with an advisor,
Right.
right, to get to the right path go forward.
You need I guess the short, sweet answer is talk to an attorney.
Yeah, right. Hey, I have another question from the audience. You mentioned that the gentleman who lost $100,000 of the $100,000 contract.
Right.
Is it possible for you to review, tell us what really happened to himself?
Sure. Well, he was in a lot of problems, but we were able to negotiate with the creditors and got it down to about 25,000 and paid over 5 years. So and I think all that's talked about in the video on my website, but that's what it was. But it was very stressful for him, having being personally liable for a business's failure. That's not a place you want to be in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sounds great, Steve.
All
Thank
right. Sure.